I don't claim to make the best Easter bread, but I understand the basic principles for working with flour. I'll show you the steps and explain the logic behind each one. If you learned something useful in this video, share it with friends. And if you like it, consider commenting and subscribing to our channel. Let's begin. The original Bulgarian Easter bread or Kozunak recipe calls for the dough to be thrown against the table 100 times to develop the gluten strands this Easter bread is known for. If you have a mixer, you don't need to manhandle the dough. Just start with 100 ml of milk and a tablespoon or 60 grams of plain yogurt. It will give a slight pleasant acidity to the dough. Add 3 eggs and beat well with a fork. In the bowl of the stand mixer, measure 350 grams of bread or high protein flour and 50 grams of sourdough starter to enhance the sour notes of the Kozunak. Sweet and sour are a gorgeous combination. If you don't have a starter, just add 25 ml of milk and 25 grams of flour to the ingredients above. Finally, 7 grams of dry instant or 14 grams of fresh yeast, as well as all the wet ingredients, are added to the dry. Start the mixer with the hook at the lowest speed. At this stage, mix slowly until you get a rough dough, because the gluten has not yet hydrated. You will get a very stiff dough. Clean the bowl and the hook of the mixer with a scraper and cover for 20 minutes. At this stage, the other ingredients are added. You can also add essences depending on the filling you use. I will use dark chocolate, so I choose to add vanilla and lemon, to which I add the grated peel from 1 lemon, 10 grams of salt, 200 grams of sugar and another 200 grams of flour. Knead again on the lowest speed until the dough absorbs all the dry ingredients for about 5 to 10 minutes. You may need to help the mixer several times. I add the flour in 2 stages. If we had added the whole amount at the beginning, we would get a very hard dough, which is difficult to make in a mixer. The hydration step is very important because this is the only time we can really develop the gluten network. With the addition of sugar and later butter, the dough will become much softer and the gluten strands will shorten. When you get a homogeneous bowl of dough, it's time to add the 125 grams of softened butter at room temperature. Add it in thirds, waiting for the previous amount to be mostly absorbed. Increase the speed of the mixer, in my case to a speed 3 out of 7, and knead. The dough will literally fall apart before your eyes, but this is expected. 15 minutes later, after a few scrapes of the sides of the bowl, the dough has once again gathered in a coherent mass and is slapping the sides of the bowl. The dough is very soft and does not break immediately when pulled. Clean the sides of the bowl and leave the dough covered for about an hour and a half at room temperature, then transfer it to the refrigerator for at least 2 hours to harden the butter. If you use sourdough starter, like I did, it is better to leave it for 24 hours to develop the sour notes in the dough further. The huge amounts of sugar and butter interfere with the normal functioning of the yeast, so the dough has only doubled in size. Divide it into 4 on the work surface, rolling each piece in a roll. Using your palms, thin them out to a length of about 35 centimeters or 14 inches. The gluten strands in the Easter bread are achieved by the correct shaping and proofing. To do this, roll out each week with the rolling pin and place the selected filling. You can use Turkish Delight, raisins soaked in rum and more. I chose dark chocolate to continue the theme of sweet and sour. Place the filling evenly along the length of the dough and roll it up again, pinching the seam. To form the Easter bread, place the 4 wicks next to each other. Transfer the left one over the next one, under the third and over the last. With the next wick, which is now the leftmost, repeat the same movements over, under and over again and continue until the whole thing is braided. Tuck the edges underneath so that they don't open during proofing. Butter the walls of the selected baking pan and transfer the Kozunak inside. Cover it and, depending on the size of your pan, leave some room for it to rise. Leave it in a warm spot for at least 3 hours. Once it's well proofed, brush it well with a beaten egg plus a tablespoon of milk. This way we'll get an incredible color but also help to stick the sugar, which we'll sprinkle on top. Bake for 45 minutes in a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 360 Fahrenheit without fan. Final tip: You can bake the Easter bread very dark brown, but do not burn it. This will again add sour notes to compensate for the sweetness. But if you don't want this, just put foil on the Kozunak when it starts browning. Bake to an internal temperature of at least 88 degrees Celsius or 190 degrees Fahrenheit, but also check with a skewer. Allow to cool for 10 minutes, then take it out of the pan. It is very soft and moist inside, a nice yellow color from the yolks and butter, a mind-blowing aroma, and of course, the threads. Enjoy!